Hey boys, it's HarmNone. Today I am doing what is probably the most requested video I have ever had. And as you can see by the title, today we are ranking every single VAPID vehicle in Grand Theft Auto Online. Now I've ranked many manufacturers over the years, but today we are doing VAPID, which is a fan favorite of many players. I'm very excited to get into this, but before we do, there is something that you must know. This list is 100% factual and cannot be argued with. Everything that I say in this video is correct and true no matter what, and if you disagree, you are simply wrong. If you can accept these terms and conditions, we can go ahead and get started with this ranking. However, if you cannot, you should exit the video immediately. Now, drop a like for me and comment something nice, because this video is going to take me so long to film and I'm really not looking forward to it, but we're going to do it anyways because it needs to be done. Consider subscribing to my channel if you guys are new. I've ranked many other manufacturers. I will have a playlist of that in the description down below. And let's go ahead and get started with F tier. And getting us started, the worst VAPID vehicle of all time in GTA Online, any GTA game ever, I don't even care if it's in them or not, the VAPID Slam Truck. Absolutely fuck the VAPID Slam Truck. This thing costs $1,310,000 and it was so hyped up to be a vehicle carrier in GTA Online. It doesn't work at all. The vehicle, you can run it up on the ramp and it won't stay. No matter what you do, you can have somebody in it holding the handbrake, accelerating, it doesn't matter, it is going to fall off. And for $1.3 million, that is completely unacceptable. Plus the Slam Truck itself completely sucks. F tier, piece of shit. Fuck you, Rockstar, for this one. Honestly, fuck you. The next worst vehicle in GTA Online is the VAPID Click Wagon, costing $1,205,000. Who asked for this vehicle? Do you know anyone who would have wanted this? Because I don't. And I don't want it. And like I said at the start of the video, that's factually correct and true. So nobody wants this thing. What a piece of shit. Especially to be named after the VAPID Click, which is a legendary muscle car in this game. This thing is the biggest disappointment ever. Completely sucks. L, second worst vehicle that VAPID has ever made. Next up, we got the VAPID Cluck and Bell Benson for $685,000. This is a Pegasus vehicle. It's a big truck. Why is this $685,000? Who knows? Next up, we got the VAPID Scrap Truck. This thing is not purchasable, but I will say, even though it is in F tier, I do appreciate that this is in the game because I feel like it is a good asset to have. Purely in terms of immersion, I think that the VAPID Scrap Truck is worth having in the game. And despite being in F tier, I do appreciate that this vehicle does exist. The same thing goes for the next vehicle in F tier, which is the VAPID Utility Truck. Based on the Sadler platform, this is also non-purchasable. This is kind of a landscaping truck sort of thing. I appreciate that this truck exists just because I think it's cool. I think it's cool to have it. Unfortunately, you can't keep it, but it's cool to see driving around. Next up, we finally have a purchasable vehicle in the VAPID Stanier for $10,000. The VAPID Stanier is what I used to pretend was a cop car when I used to want to pretend to be a cop in GTA Online. Beyond that, it has zero use and absolutely no relevance to me. It's pretty terrible, so it belongs in F tier. Next up, we got the VAPID Winky. What? Oh my god. $825,000 for this thing, and that's with the trade price. $1.1 million even without the trade price. Now, I'm a big fan of World War II, history, everything like that. And when they added the VAPID Winky into the game, I was like, damn, this is kind of sick. But then you drive it and then you realize very quickly that this is not that sick. It's very cool. It's got a lot of historically accurate stuff that you can put on it. As a novelty item, it's very cool. It just did not need to be $825,000 fucking dollars or $1.1 million fucking dollars. Absolutely unreal. Typical Rockstar though. But yeah, the VAPID Winky, I'm sorry, it has to go in F tier. It's just a fact. Next up, we got the VAPID Minivan for $30,000. The VAPID Minivan is, I mean, honestly, a little bit cool. Like a little bit cool in kind of a meme joke way. It's okay. It's got a little bit of customization, you know, sort of. It's very mid to drive. It definitely belongs in F tier, but it's kind of cool. Next up, we got the VAPID Speedo, non-purchasable. Yet again, this thing just, it's the VAPID Speedo, bro. You can't do anything to it. Nothing, like, you can't Yeah, it's the, okay, anyway. Next up, we have the VAPID Lost Slam Van, and this is another non-purchasable vehicle, but I do think this one is relatively cool just because it has the Lost MC logos on it, stuff like that. Pretty neat. This is what they pursue you in those missions, and it's really annoying because usually they have a guy in the back that's shooting at you, and they are, you know, generally pretty accurate, which is even more annoying. Overall, it's a cool vehicle. The performance absolutely sucks, but it is kind of a cool vehicle at the least. Next up, we have another purchasable, or at least claimable, vehicle in the VAPID Bobcat XL, coming in at 23 grand. The VAPID Bobcat XL is kind of an interesting vehicle because I'm not really sure if it's supposed to be a modern truck or if it's supposed to be an old truck. It has this weird way of kind of transcending time to me, and I can't really tell if it's modern or old because it kind of looks like it could be both. There's some elements of it that look old, there's some elements of it that look modern. Overall, I would say it is probably old, but I don't know for sure. Overall, kind of interesting, no customization, pretty terrible performance, but it's kind of neat at the same time. And finally, at the very tip top of F tier, we have the VAPID Radius, coming in at $32,000. This thing is kind of legendary, actually. For being so cheap and for being in F tier, it's actually, well, almost good. It almost escaped F tier, but it just couldn't because of reasons. It's all-wheel drive, zero customization, but somehow the performance is actually pretty decent. It's based off the Ford Edge in real life, which is a terrible car, but it's kind of cool at the same time. So shout out to the VAPID Radius, you almost made it, buddy. That concludes F tier. So on to the next tier. Now the next tier is of course D tier, and starting things off we have the VAPID Clown Van. This is a non-purchasable vehicle that only appears in select missions, which is interesting. Kind of slow and yeah, okay, yeah, there's not much to say about it, man. You can't do anything to it. It's not claimable, it's not purchasable, you can't keep it. VAPID Clown Van, bottom of D tier, narrowly escaping F tier. Honestly, the VAPID Radius might low-key be even better than this thing. Not 100%, but shit, I don't know. Next up we got the VAPID Slam Van, costing $49,500. I personally am a VAPID Slam Van hater, and as you legally signed up for at the start of the video, if you disagree with that, you're wrong, so keep that in mind if you're at this point in the video. The VAPID Slam Van just sucks, man. Like, it's kind of cool. It could have been something really neat and interesting, although it wouldn't have made sense. My biggest gripes with this thing are that it's just so bad handling wise. It's kind of fast actually, oddly enough, but yeah, it can't go around a corner and you get wheel spin for days, which I guess is kind of good if that's what you want, but that's not personally what I look for when I am driving a vehicle. Overall, it's kind of cool. It escaped F tier, which honestly, it's lucky to do that on my list, man, to be real, but hey, the VAPID Slam Van kind of bottom of D tier, sort of thing. Next up, we have the much cooler VAPID Minivan Custom from Benny's. So this is going to cost you 30 grand to purchase it initially, plus 330 grand to upgrade it into the custom variant. However, the custom variant has a lot more customization and is just generally a lot cooler than the regular VAPID minivan. So I felt like it was deserving of D tier at least, but not super high up in D tier because at the end of the day, it is still a VAPID minivan. It does get increased performance over the regular minivan, only slightly though, and a lot of customization, which is nice to have, I guess. Next up, we got the VAPID Peyote. Don't get me wrong, beautiful looking car, but everything else about it kind of really mid. Goes for $38,000. You can steal it off the street and keep it, and it has a little bit of customization actually, which is pretty cool. Overall though, definitely D tier, yeah, not that awesome. Next up we have a relatively new car in the VAPID Unmarked Cruiser, costing $2,962,500 with the trade price to $3,950,000. Yeah, a bit steep, hey? Well, you get access to dispatch work though, so that'll pay you 25 grand every time you do it. It only does take 5 minutes, so there is that. Honestly, out of the police cars, this might be the best one to purchase just because of how low the purchase price is, and the ability to make that profit back is going to be a lot easier with this car than a lot of the other police cars in the game. No customization though, which is insanely lame for a $3 million car. Still kind of cool though at the same time, you know what I mean? It escaped F tier. It's still kind of decent, you know, so it's got that going for it at least. Next up we have the VAPID Ellie, costing $423,750 if you have the trade price. If not, $565,000. Now the reason that the VAPID Ellie is here, despite its relatively good looks, is because it has absolutely god-awful performance. It has engine resistance, which basically just means the car shifts way too late and therefore has terrible acceleration as well as a horrible top speed. The handling on it isn't that great either, so overall it's kind of really mid, and for a vehicle that is supposed to be based off of a very early model Mustang, the customization is a huge letdown with this one too. Now it is relatively cheap, but for just a few extra dollars, you can get a much better rendition of a very early Mustang. So that's why the Ellie is in D tier. This thing is pretty mid. Next up, we got the VAPID Chino for 225 grand. Honestly, I don't really have anything bad to say about the Chino. It's just a land yacht. That's really it. It's pretty slow. It kind of handles okay, but it's honestly because it's so slow. And it's got a little bit of customization, like a tiny teensy little bit. Overall, it's D tier. That's just how it is, you know? Next up though, we have the VAPID Peyote Custom. A few slots ahead of the regular peyote. This is going to cost you 38 grand for the initial peyote purchase price, or of course you can steal it, plus 620,000 for the custom variant. Now the custom variant does get a lot more customization and overall looks a lot cooler in my opinion. I'm not 100% sure that it's worth 620 grand. In fact, I'm actually certain of the opposite. It is not worth 620 grand, which is also part of the reason that it's still down here in D tier, because you're not really getting anything for your money other than a bit of additional customization and slightly improved performance. The Peyote Custom is still a cool vehicle, but not cool enough to escape D tier, so better luck next time. Next up, we got the VAPID Slam Van Custom as the very last vehicle in D tier, costing you $49,500 for the initial Slam Van purchase price, plus $415,000 for the Benny's upgrade to the Slam Van. The Slam Van Custom gets a lot of customization, which is cool. It gets mildly improved performance, at least in a straight line. Honestly, I think that the wheel spin is even worse on the custom variant, but it does look a lot cooler while you're spinning the wheels for 20 seconds as you get into second gear. The Slam Van Custom still, it just wasn't quite good enough to escape D tier for me. Still a cool vehicle, don't get me wrong, but it's really not my cup of tea. And you know, I'm right, you're wrong if you disagree, you know, that type of thing. But that's it for D tier. Honestly, D tier, pretty huge improvement over F tier. Let's talk about C tier now. Okay, so in C tier, we have a lot more vehicles than the previous two categories, and we're starting things off with the VAPID Imperator, costing $1,718,000 if you have the trade price, and if you do not, it's going to be $2,284,940. Very specific price there, Rockstar. Thank you very much. The VAPID Imperator, when it's clean, is a really nice looking car, actually. I'm kind of a big fan of this. However, I do wish that it had some actual clean customization options because of course it is an arena war vehicle at its core. Still, I feel like they could have given it some clean options that we could have done to it, but unfortunately they didn't do that. Now, for the purchase price, it is an absolutely horrible vehicle, but the purchase price is reflective of it being an arena war vehicle. So that's why you get that insane price tag on it. It looks really cool. It's kind of quick in a straight line-ish. The handling is okay for an old muscle car. It's not good by any means, but it's okay. It's acceptable sort of thing. Overall, it's, yeah, bottom of C tier for sure. Narrowly escaped D tier. Like, it was very close. I deliberated over this for some time, but it made it to C tier. So good for you, Imperator. Good for you. Next up, we have another Slam Van variant, and this is the Arena War Slam Van. This is going to be $49,500 for the initial price of the Slam Van, plus $1,321,875 for the upgrade to the Arena War variant. Now, with the Arena War stuff on it, it becomes a significantly cooler vehicle and shockingly much more drivable. It's amazing what happens when you put tires on a vehicle that are a little bit wider and add a little bit more weight to it. Overall, very cool vehicle. You can decorate the hell out of these things and you can equip them with weapon systems, proximity mines, all kinds of crazy stuff, as well as armor and big spikes and like just crazy looking stuff. So very cool vehicle in my opinion. Not cool enough to not be in C tier, but it's a lot cooler than the regular Slam Van. Does come at a huge cost though, so do keep that in mind. Next up, we have the VAPID Taxi, costing $487,500 to $650,000, and you don't even need it to do cab work. I cannot fathom the price of this vehicle for it being a Pegasus vehicle. However, the reason it's in C tier is because I do think it has a little bit of novelty to it. Now, could you just call the downtown cab company to get a taxi if you wanted one? Yes, you absolutely could, but you could also spend 650 grand on a taxi that is a Pegasus vehicle that you have to call and then go to an inconvenient location to pick up and then get in it. And then when it gets damaged, you're going to want a new one anyway. So then you call Pegasus. Yeah, so realistically, I maybe should have put this in F tier, but I still think it is kind of cool that we do have the ability to purchase this and, you know, have it as a Pegasus vehicle. It's not the best, but could be a lot worse, I guess. Next up, we have a non-purchasable vehicle, and that is, of course, the VAPID Sheriff Cruiser from Blaine County. This thing's pretty cool. If you've ever been driving away from these guys, you'll know that they get real crazy off-road, and these cars actually don't have a limiter on them as far as speed goes when you're not driving them. If you are driving them, though, they are the slowest pieces of shit of all time. So awesome. Thanks, Rockstar. The Sheriff Cruiser, though, pretty cool. Yeah, cops, you know, when they come after you, they're going to come in these in Blaine County. Kind of cool. Anyway, that's about it. Next up, we got the VAPID Stanier LE Cruiser, costing $3,517,500 for the trade price, if not $4,690,000, man. This is an expensive vehicle. However, considering that the unmarked cruiser that we talked about in D tier is only about 600 grand cheaper than this thing, you get a lot more performance out of the Stanier LE cruiser than you do out of the unmarked cruiser. And for that reason, I felt like the price increase was a little bit justified, not 600 grand justified, but a little bit justified for it to get into C tier, because it truly is a much, much better performing vehicle. So that's why it's here. It's got some customization. It's upgradable. You can store it in a garage. You can call it through the mechanic, much better than the VAPID Taxi, I will just say that. And you can also make it look just like the Sheriff Cruiser that we just talked about, except it's a personal vehicle, which is really, really cool. Next up, we have the VAPID Saddler, costing $35,000, and the reason that the Saddler is so high and not in F tier is because this is the #1 utility class vehicle in Grand Theft Auto Online for racing. Pretty crazy. I don't know anybody who does utility races, but if you were to ever do one, make sure to own a VAPID Saddler because nothing will even come close. The Saddler is an awesome vehicle in that regard. In every other regard, it's kind of lame. I kind of wish that it had some customization. I feel like it could actually be a really, really cool old F250, F350, like an early 2000s model. And if you could customize it, I think that'd be really sweet. There are a bunch of different variants of it though, which is pretty neat. So yeah, be on the lookout for those if you're interested in the Saddler for some reason. It's a cool vehicle though. I own one. I think I own 3 of them. But yeah, Saddler, pretty cool. Next up, we have the relatively new VAPID Ratel, costing $1,873,000. This thing is actually pretty good performance-wise. However, it's rear-wheel drive, and it is one of those like Baja buggies, and I just feel like it didn't really deliver. I feel like it should have been able to like wheelie, maybe, or something like that. I feel like it should have been maybe slightly better off-road, but it's just generally pretty trash, and for almost $1.9 million, I just don't really feel like it's that great of a vehicle. The customization was kind of mid as well. I'm not a big fan of the VAPID Ratel. It should have just been a little bit better in my opinion, especially for the price tag. Next up, we have an absolute icon of GTA Online, and that is of course the VAPID Police Cruiser. This thing is not purchasable, but it is driven by the LSPD, and everybody who's watching this video right now knows what this car is. Even if you don't know GTA Online, even if you don't play GTA Online, you know what the VAPID Police Cruiser looks like because it is literally just that famous. It is that famous of a vehicle. That alone got it into C tier. And of course, it's the exact same as the VAPID Sheriff Cruiser. The guys who drive these are absolutely nuts, and they can go as fast as they want. And they will catch you, no matter what you're in. You could be in a $6 million supercar and these guys will pull up right behind you. Overall, cool vehicle. Next up, we got the VAPID Peyote Gasser, coming in at $805,000. This thing is really, really good in a straight line. It can kind of go around corners, albeit with a lot of understeer. Kind of a cool vehicle though. It is literally just meant to be a drag racing car in GTA Online, but it maybe could have been a little better at drag racing. It's a little bit underwhelming and it will get gapped by a lot of other vehicles in this game. So that is something that is kind of unfortunate about the Gasser. Still, I think it's a very unique vehicle. I think it's very cool. For 805 grand, I think it's a little bit of a scam, but could be worse, I guess. Maybe. Next up, we have the VAPID Arena War Imperator, coming in at $1,718,000 to $2,284,940, and that is the same purchase price as the regular clean version of the Imperator. But of course, this is the Arena War version, which can have machine guns, it can have a boost upgrade, a jump upgrade, it can also have saw blades that come out of it, proximity mines, all kinds of crazy stuff. This will of course cost you a fortune, and the vehicle is generally really terrible. It wheel spins for days, probably just as much as the VAPID Slam van, which is really unfortunate, but if you kind of get the hang of it, it can be somewhat of a tolerable vehicle to drive. Maybe, sort of. It's pretty cool though. The customization alone with the Arena War stuff is really neat. I think it's worth owning. Well, maybe not worth owning, but it's interesting at the very least. Next up, of course, we have the VAPID Hot Knife coming in at $90,000, and this is a removed vehicle. The first removed vehicle that we've talked about on this list. The Hot Knife was always kind of a, well, it kind of really reminds me of the Chrysler Prowler in real life, which is one of the most horrible looking vehicles of all time. So I really actually don't like the VAPID Hot Knife that much, but you don't necessarily have to customize it to look like the Prowler. It can be a little bit more sort of sleek looking and like kind of cool looking. It's got a little bit of customization as well, and it is an OG vehicle. I felt like it was deserving of, you know, upper C tier, but yeah, beyond that, not much good to say about it. Next up, we have the VAPID Flash GT, costing $1,675,000, and I can already hear people screaming, why is it there? Please no. The VAPID Flash GT has engine resistance, similar to a lot of other VAPID vehicles, which is very unfortunate. This of course means that it has stunted acceleration, a bad top speed, and it's just generally not what it should have been. It's based off the Ford Focus RS, and it just could have been so much better. I wish that Rockstar would go back and fix these old vehicles, but unfortunately it doesn't really seem like they want to. It could have been so good. It really, really could have been so good, but unfortunately, yeah, it's deserving of C tier because of what it is. Next up, we have another vehicle with engine resistance, and that is the VAPID Dominator GTX, costing $725,000. Such a cool looking car, had so much potential, great customization, really good handling as well, by the way, but the acceleration and top speed are absolute garbage because of engine resistance yet again. It's a crying shame. I don't know why the hell they did that, but man, the GTX could have been so sweet, but unfortunately, it's just deserving of C tier. It's just a little bit ahead of the Flash GT because I just generally think it's a little bit of a cooler vehicle. It's very unique. It's like very Mustang-esque, but also Rockstar put their little spin on it, which I do appreciate. So that's very cool. It's just such a shame that it's so bad. In fact, it's actually available on the podium this week that the video is coming out. So if you're watching this in the future, completely ignore that, but if you're watching it right now, you can go win it from the LS car meet, which is kind of cool. Next up, we got the VAPID Hustler. This is another removed vehicle, and it costed $625,000 when it was available to be purchased. The Hustler is kind of like the Hot Knife in a way. It's like an old hot rod sort of style vehicle. It is a lot more expensive though, but the Hustler has some pretty good customization and generally I think is a pretty good looking old hot rod style vehicle. This is one that's really cool. It definitely deserves to be a little bit higher in C tier than the Hot Knife, for example, mostly just because it doesn't look like the Chrysler Prowler. Next up, we have the VAPID Dominator FX Interceptor, which is a relatively new vehicle, costing $3,712,500 for the trade price to $4,950,000 if you don't have the trade price. This is the second best police car in Grand Theft Auto Online in terms of like top speed, acceleration, general performance, I would say, except for off-road. But this thing is pretty good actually, but it's super expensive and it's really not going to come in handy that often. Still a cool novelty item to have. I personally own one, but I don't think it's worth it for everybody to own one. And I felt like C tier, being close to the top of C tier, I must say, was pretty fitting for this vehicle. So there you have it. Next up, we got the VAPID Chino Custom. $225,000 for the initial price, plus $180,000 for the custom variant upgrade, which is actually pretty cheap as far as Benny's goes. And that will unlock a ton of customization for you, which is really good. The VAPID Chino Custom is an interesting car. With the Benny's upgrades on it, it is actually pretty sweet, even better than the regular Chino, which I already think is a somewhat decent vehicle. Chino Custom though, definitely something that I would look into. Relatively cheap. If you want a cheap lowrider that's pretty good, this is a good one to look into for sure. And for the final vehicle of C tier, we have the VAPID Blade, costing $160,000, and unfortunately, it is removed. I think that this thing looks absolutely awesome. It looks like it's just got a drag pack on it, to be honest. No customization really at all. Like there's a few little things you can do here and there, but I actually love this car because it's pretty quick in a straight line. It's got like good sort of drag performance, quote unquote. And it also has somewhat decent handling. Like the handling is not great and it definitely understeers, but the vehicle goes exactly where you want it to go, which is pretty cool. I mean, unless the corner's like super sharp, but for the most part, it will stay exactly where you want it to. The VAPID Blade, definitely the best vehicle of C tier. Definitely deserving of C tier, very top, very narrowly missed being in B tier, but unfortunately I just couldn't do it. Moving on to B tier, we are starting things off with the VAPID Desert Raid, costing $695,000. This is just a worse VAPID trophy truck. So you can probably tell the trophy truck's going to be ahead of it on this list. So I just spoiled that. But the Desert Raid is just big and bulky. It's very top heavy looking and feeling when you drive it, meaning that you're going to roll over a lot, especially off-road on uneven surfaces that are banked to one side or the other. The Desert Raid just doesn't really do too well with that. Also, no customization. For 695 grand, not a terrible vehicle, but like I said, it's just worse than the trophy truck. It's more expensive, it's top heavy looking, and still no customization. VAPID Desert Raid, definitely the worst vehicle of B tier. Narrowly escaped being in C tier. Just ahead of the Desert Raid, we have the VAPID Sand King SWB for 38 grand. This is a fan favorite, and this is the extended cab version of the Sand King. It's a pretty cool vehicle. It's got basically the same customization as the Sand King XL, it's just got 2 less doors, meaning that it is a 2-seater versus a 4-seater. Sand King, short wheelbase, is pretty cool. Definitely a cool vehicle. I'm sure everybody probably has one of these or has had one at some point in time in GTA Online. I probably don't need to talk about it too much, but yeah, Sand King SWB, cool vehicle. Next up, we have the removed VAPID Retinue, costing $615,000 based off of a early Ford Escort, I do believe, or maybe even a Ford Capri, depending on where you're looking at it from. The Retinue is a really cool car. It's got some nice customization, not a lot of it, but it's got nice customization. It's kind of supposed to be a rally car in GTA, I feel like, and it is quite good off-road, I must say, especially for being rear-wheel drive only. The Retinue is a really cool vehicle. Next time it gets added into the game, I would recommend purchasing one, honestly. Really cool, really good off-road. Honestly, just kind of a fantastic car. Looks great, good customization, performs pretty decently. Overall, good car. Next up, we have the VAPID Sand King XL, the big boy, costing $45,000. This is the one that you will see spawned in at various Los Santos customs, fully customized and stuff like that sell for about 23 grand. It is a very cool vehicle, some nice customization, very good off-road performance. It is a little too bouncy for my liking sometimes, but it's hard to deny that the Sand King XL is a great vehicle in GTA Online, and it certainly is super iconic. Next up, for the pure sake of fun, we have the VAPID Liberator, costing $556,511. It is, of course, a monster truck. This thing's pretty fun to drive around. Not the greatest performance ever, not the greatest handling, too big to fit in a lot of places, but the VAPID Liberator is nothing but fun. It is a very cool vehicle in that sense, and I would definitely recommend picking it up whenever you can. Next up, we got the VAPID Retinue Mark II, costing $1,215,000 to $1,620,000 if you don't have the trade price. The Retinue Mark II is just the other VAPID Retinue's older brother. It's got some really nice customization. It's got great off-road and on-road performance. It certainly was destined to be a rally car in this game, and it's really good. For being rear-wheel drive only, it's actually a bit of a shredder. It's very good on-road, it's very good off-road. The Retinue Mark II, certainly a very unique looking car, really good customization as well. I would recommend a Retinue Mark II for sure. Next up, we got the VAPID Bullet, an OG supercar. In fact, I do believe it is the worst performing supercar in all of Grand Theft Auto Online, but for 155 grand, I feel like the performance is decent enough. It doesn't have anything in the way of customization, but I do think that it is actually genuinely one of the very best OG cars in GTA Online, at least looks-wise. Plus, for not having a spoiler option, it also has really good handling. I think the VAPID Bullet is a solid vehicle. For 155 grand, you literally cannot go wrong with this thing. Next up, we got the VAPID Riata, based off of the Ford Bronco, costing $380,000. This thing is an off-road machine, super good at rock crawling, great customization as well, decent straight line performance, decent handling performance. It's super high up off the ground, and if you lower the suspension, you won't really have too much of an issue with tipping over. That's a good tip for the Riata though, because if you keep it raised, you will find some tipping issues, and they will be coming your way for sure. Next up, we have the OG VAPID Dominator for $35,000. This thing has insane performance for what it is, being a stock muscle car that you can get right off the street and having a top speed of around 125, 126 miles per hour. absolutely crazy. Plus, it's got some decent customization. The color combinations with the primary and secondary colors look really good on it too. Overall, you can't go wrong with a VAPID Dominator. For 35 grand, like, you can't really beat this thing in any way. It's absolutely awesome. Next up, we have the legendary VAPID Guardian for $375,000. This vehicle is super good for off-roading. It's a huge truck. It's based off like those Ford F650 vehicles, which is pretty neat. It's pretty neat to get one. It reminds me of Ironhide from Transformers, even though he was a Chevy, but you know, type of thing. The VAPID Guardian though, its main claim to fame is that you can drive this thing almost entirely underwater so long as the exhaust stacks on the back of it remain out of the water. So cool. Plus it also seats 6 players, which is really interesting. 2 players can sit out in the bed while 4 sit inside. Overall, very cool vehicle. For 375 grand, you can't really go wrong with the VAPID Guardian. It's just too cool, man. Next up, we got the VAPID GB200, costing $840,000, based off of the Ford RS2000 Cosworth, I do believe it's called. Very cool vehicle. All-wheel drive, great acceleration, great launch, pretty decent top speed. Awesome handling on-road and off-road. You can't go wrong with the GB200, man. Some decent customization, albeit I wish there was a little bit more, but it's got enough to satisfy most people, I would say. Next up, we got the Pisswasser Dominator for free. Crazy. This thing even outperforms the regular Dominator, which costs 35 grand, but this one is free, man. That's crazy. Now, you are stuck with the livery on it, which is a little bit detrimental to the look of the vehicle, but overall the performance is absolutely fantastic with the Pisswasser Dominator. You cannot go wrong with buying this vehicle, especially because it's free. But the Pisswasser Dominator, absolutely legendary. Great vehicle. Next up, we got the VAPID Trophy Truck, costing $550,000. Like I said a little bit earlier, the VAPID Trophy Truck is just the better version of the more expensive, bigger VAPID Desert Raid. The trophy truck has a much wider stance, it's a much smaller vehicle, it's got faster acceleration, better top speed, better handling, looks better, still no customization, but for 550k you literally cannot go wrong with the VAPID trophy truck. This thing is absolutely awesome. Please buy one, actually. It is such a cool vehicle. Next up, we have the VAPID Caracara 6x6, costing $1,775,000 off of Warstock Cash and Carry. The Caracara 6x6 is actually one of the greatest handling vehicles in all of Grand Theft Auto Online, in particular when it's off-road. The Caracara 6x6 handles like a dream. It's really awesome. The truck does not feel nearly as big as it is. Plus it does have a mounted machine gun on the back, which is really cool. That outputs crazy damage. The performance is great. Overall, you can't go wrong with the Caracara 6x6 except for the price. The price is so expensive for this thing, and that's why it's in B tier. If the price was like half of what it is, this thing would easily have made it into A tier and probably placed around mid A tier, but the price is just way too high for what you're getting. Next up, we have one of my favorite vehicles that VAPID has ever made in the VAPID Contender for 250 grand. Unfortunately, it is a removed vehicle, but still it is so cool nonetheless, and whenever it gets added back into the game, I would highly recommend that you purchase one. Oddly enough though, this thing is within the SUV category instead of the off-road category, which I think was a huge mistake by Rockstar, but still, very cool vehicle for free mode. You can put a canopy on it, not sure why you would, but you can do it if you want to. Other than that, not really any customization, but the performance definitely goes pretty crazy with the Contender. Next up, for the final vehicle of B tier, we have the VAPID Dominator FX, costing $1,550,000. And it is from the latest DLC. This thing is pretty cool. It's based off the Fox Body Mustang, of course, but a lot of people complain that it's the wrong generation of Fox Body, that they should have added the other one. Not really sure who I agree with. Maybe I agree with them, maybe I agree with those people. I don't really know. The customization's pretty decent though. The livery choices were a little bit mid, not gonna lie, kind of disappointed in those. And the customization wasn't that great either. Like, it was overall like pretty middle of the road, sort of like not awesome but not terrible either. The Dominator FX, cool vehicle. I just feel like it could have done a little bit more. For $1,550,000 too, I just feel like it's a little bit too expensive for what you're getting in actuality. So there you have it. That is it for B tier. Now it is time to move on to A tier. And starting things off in A tier, we have the VAPID Tow Truck. This thing comes with the chop shop whenever you purchase one, and you can use it to tow vehicles back to your chop shop and scrap them for money. which is pretty cool. Now doing this will also increase your daily safe income, which therefore generates you money. And I feel like any vehicle that generates you money should place fairly well, which is why this thing is an A tier. Now the reason that it's not any higher than A tier is because you can't take it out when you're not doing a mission, and even when you're out on a mission, you can only pick up the vehicle that you are designated to be able to pick up, which I think is a complete L, and I really wish that Rockstar didn't do that, although I do understand given the issues that previous tow trucks have caused for them in GTA Online. Next up, we got the VAPID Dominator GTT, costing $915,000 if you have the trade price. If you don't, it's going to be $1,220,000. This is what the VAPID LE should have always been, but they just decided to add yet another Dominator into the game. Now, I know the LE is not technically a Dominator, but like, bro, I mean, come on. It probably should have been, just for the sake of it. But the Dominator GTT came out with the Tuners DLC. It's got some awesome customization, fantastic handling for a muscle car as well, great acceleration, decent top speed, looks amazing. There's literally nothing wrong with the Dominator GTT. It just simply doesn't perform and do as much as some of the vehicles that are ahead of it on this list. Next up, we got the Arena War Dominator, costing 35 grand for the initial price plus $1,132,000 to upgrade it into the Arena War variant of the Dominator. The Arena War Dominator is kind of similar to some of the other vehicles we've gone over. It gets access to weapon systems, it gets access to slick mines, and it looks a lot cooler. Plus, I do think it also gets increased performance, and it definitely gets a boost as well as a jump ability, which is really, really cool. The VAPID Arena War Dominator, very cool vehicle, definitely something that I would recommend looking into. You never see anybody using these anymore, and I think that that should change. On to the next vehicle, we have the VAPID Click for $909,000. The VAPID Click, like I said earlier in the video, is an absolutely legendary muscle car, and this thing actually dominated the muscle car category in GTA Online racing for a very long time, but for a lot of it, it flew under the radar completely. Nobody really knew about the VAPID Click, and if you went into a race with the Click, you would smoke literally everybody else in the race. It was that good. It's got a little bit of customization. Overall, it's not the greatest looking or performing car anymore by today's standards, but still it is an awesome vehicle, and just for its heritage, I feel like it is deserving of being an A tier. Next up, we got the VAPID Caracara 4x4 for $875,000. This thing is a bit of a beast in the off-road category. It won't win you any races necessarily, unless you're playing against people that don't have draggers and stuff like that, Camachos even, maybe even the Canis Terminus, but it is still a very decent performing vehicle in the off-road category. It's super fun in free mode, you can hold 4 players, it's got some nice customization, and it can also take an absolute thrashing as well, which is pretty cool. The VAPID Caracara 4x4, definitely a cool vehicle. My only gripe with it, and the only reason it's not an S tier, is because it is simply too skinny. I don't know why the cabin of this truck is so tiny and so skinny looking, but it definitely is, and for that reason, it's an A tier. And the last vehicle of A tier, the best vehicle of A tier, is of course the VAPID FMJ, costing $1,750,000, and it is of course a removed vehicle, and this is the only other VAPID supercar in GTA Online other than the VAPID Bullet. Now the FMJ is based off of the more modern rendition of the Ford GT, although they kind of missed a little bit. It doesn't quite look like it in some ways, but in other ways it definitely does. It's got a little bit of customization, it's rear wheel drive only. Unfortunately, it was never a very great performing supercar, but it is still really cool, and for free mode, I don't think you can really go wrong with it. It is just a little on the expensive side for what you're getting, in my opinion. I feel like this thing should cost maybe around $1,200,000, but it costs $1,750,000, which is a little steep. But anyway guys, there you have it. That is it for A tier. Now of course, it is time to move on to S tier. The best vehicles that VAPID has ever made in GTA Online. Starting us off, we have the VAPID Speedo Custom, and this comes with the purchase of a nightclub, which is the best business in GTA Online. The Speedo Custom is upgradable to have a top-mounted player-controlled minigun, which is really cool, as well as armor plating, and proximity mines can be dropped behind it. You use this thing to deliver nightclub goods when you have a smaller sale, but of course you can also just take it out in free mode and use it on other players, NPCs, and things of that nature. It's not the fastest vehicle ever, but it is upgradable performance-wise as well, which is pretty cool. Overall, I feel like it is Generally a pretty underrated vehicle, and I do feel like it is deserving of being an S tier for sure. Next up we have the VAPID Illusion. Coming in at $1,835,000, this is the only VAPID vehicle in GTA Online that is Imani Tech capable. You can put armor plating on this thing, as well as the proximity mine dropper, and of course the missile lock-on jammer, which is very cool. Unfortunately, no bullet resistant windows and no front mounted machine guns, and honestly, the performance of this vehicle is a little bit underwhelming. It is within the SUV category, but in the SUV category, it places pretty poorly. The handling isn't that great. However, the acceleration, launch, and top speed are all pretty decent as far as SUVs go. It is a decent vehicle, but it basically got here because it is Imani Tech capable, and that is a very unique thing for VAPID, and it is also very helpful to have in free mode. Next up, we have the VAPID Dominator GT, costing $2,195,000, and this is regarded as the best muscle car in Grand Theft Auto Online when it comes to muscle class races. This thing is super quick. It has a great combination of speed, acceleration, and handling that many other cars, whether they are a VAPID vehicle or not, cannot keep up with. This thing is super good. My only real gripe with the Dominator GT is that it is a convertible and not a hardtop. If this thing was a hardtop, it could have potentially been the #1 VAPID vehicle in GTA Online, but because it's got that ugly soft top convertible, it just had to be where it is. Still placed really well, still is an awesome vehicle generally, still is something that I would recommend purchasing for sure, but it is just simply not the best VAPID vehicle. But the best VAPID vehicle in GTA Online is of course the VAPID Dominator ASP, costing $1,331,250 if you have the trade price to $1,775,000. Now the reason that this thing is here is because this places super high within the muscle car category when it comes to racing on circuits. However, it's also insanely good in free mode because it does have the ability to become stanced because it is a tuner's DLC car. And with it stanced, this is one of the fastest vehicles in GTA Online. It gets an insane speed boost from being stanced. It obviously is going to lose out on a little bit of its handling ability, but even when stanced, this thing is still one of the best handling muscle cars in the entire game. Plus, being that it's from the Tuners DLC, it's also extremely customizable, potentially even being the most customizable muscle car in all of Grand Theft Auto Online. I also happen to love this year of Mustang. I think it's very cool, and I just think that the VAPID Dominator ASP ticks a lot of boxes. Great handling, excellent customization, places really well in races. You could even argue that this thing is better than the Dominator GT in certain races. Very cool vehicle. It's also usable in the Tuners subcategory for racing as well, which is another great piece of utility. Overall, this thing is definitely deserving of being the #1 VAPID vehicle in Grand Theft Auto Online. And with that, we've completed the VAPID vehicle tier list in GTA Online. Finally, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to smash that like button for me. That's the first time I've said that and I already regret it. Make sure to hit that like button for me, please. That would be very cool. If you didn't enjoy the video though, of course, feel free to dislike. Consider subscribing to my channel if you guys are new. I am going for 300,000 subs this year and I'm really trying to get there and I need your help to do it. So if you want to help me out, consider subscribing. Check out my other content first, of course, if you want to, because you should make sure that you like what I actually do. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed it. I will see you all in the next one. Until then, take care. Peace.